he cornered me. And then he asked me, with his arm up, he asked me, "How you doing?" I'm kind of like, wow, what the heck? Very uncomfortable. And then he rubbed his hand down my breast. He said, "If you need anything at all, you let me know."
The FBI's investigation into Sean Diddy Combs has officially crossed into territory nobody expected, and suddenly Ellen DeGeneres is caught right in the middle of it. What started as a trafficking and racketeering case has now widened into something deeper, something that touches the powerful names who used to float in and out of Diddy's world like it was just another night out. Agents are now quietly mapping the circle of well-known figures who might have helped maintain the silence that surrounded his reputation for years, not by force but by pretending not to see what was happening around them. And according to several insiders, Ellen's name isn't just a joke online anymore. It's reportedly sitting on a selective list of public figures whose past conversations are being reviewed by investigators. That alone is wild, because when the FBI shifts focus from the headline star and starts checking the people around them, it usually means they believe someone on the outside played a part in keeping what prosecutors describe as a criminal setup running smoothly.
There is a partial verdict in the Diddy case after 2 days. The jury has reached unanimous decisions on 4 of the 5 counts.
The problem is that 5th count means that we don't get to find out what the verdicts are on the other 4 because they are hung up on.
It suggests there might have been people helping protect the image, the mystery, and the late night lifestyle that's now under a microscope. This major twist came right after agents gained access to fresh digital files from members of Diddy's inner circle, messages, notes, and old exchanges with industry heavyweights.
That he has with others, and just because no one else has been charged, which normally in a RICO case you would have others charged, it was a statute designed to get mob bosses, trying to get at criminal behavior that's like a web of criminal behavior that you can't necessarily prove, like the one thing or the statute of limitations expired on the other thing, but you're just showing this bad guy who's operating what's clearly an enterprise that over and over engages in criminal problems or criminal acts.
Including TV hosts and entertainment executives. Ellen's inclusion reportedly comes from archived interactions reaching back to 2018, tied to that one interview she did with Diddy on her show, where she joked about the real party starting at midnight. Back then it sounded playful, just daytime TV comedy, nothing else. But now those same words line up almost too perfectly with parts of the witness statements describing Diddy's late night gatherings.
Did Phil explain why he's speaking out now?
He said he's speaking out because he believes Diddy's a predator. He wants accountability, and he doesn't want someone like this to run unchecked in the future.
Gatherings, prosecutors now say, involve manipulation, pressure, and recordings that were allegedly used to keep people quiet. Investigators are said to be comparing Ellen's on-air jokes with newly uncovered private conversations to see if she knew anything about Diddy's nightlife beyond what viewers saw on screen. They're checking for tone, timing, and consistency, not accusing but analyzing whether her comments were simple humor or a sign she had a clearer picture of his behind-the-scenes habits. The reappearance of that interview has sent shockwaves through Hollywood because people are finally realizing how much context can change when a new evidence comes to light. Anyone who saw it remembers Diddy smiling as Ellen teased him for being late to her event and him promising, "I won't let you down on this big one." At the time, it felt like harmless banter, but now it's being watched again through a completely different lens.
I don't know this, but it just seems very suspicious when you go through and you look at in the history of different people that can make you go away if you listen, I've worried about some of the things that I talk about on my show.
A lens shaped by testimony, investigations, and a long trail of digital footprints. Fans laughed at the playful exchange back then, but once Diddy was taken into custody, that same clip started spreading all over the internet again, and the energy around it felt completely different. Viewers began claiming they could sense something tense in that room.
Did you ever spend time with the guy? Did you ever meet Diddy?
I've met him before, yeah.
How was he?
Very nice guy, very smart. Super business, he's very successful.
Like the atmosphere wasn't as lighthearted as it looked. Some even highlighted Ellen's line, "Once you get there, the party really start." Especially now that prosecutors allege those exact late night hours were when certain private events reportedly shifted into something far more troubling. The timing of that line is now being looked at with a whole new level of seriousness. Federal agents definitely haven't missed the coincidence either. They're reportedly breaking down everything. timestamps from the taping, potential guest movements, even the internal emails sent around that episode, and the days that followed.
Of coming forward. They've been afraid of what he could potentially do to them within the industry, what he could do to them professionally, maybe even personally. And so, yes, it's been a dark secret they've held on to for a very, very long time.
For the FBI, this isn't entertainment talk or rumor chasing. This is about timelines and patterns. It's about figuring out who knew what and at what moment. According to someone with insight into the investigation, the Bureau's Digital Forensics Unit is comparing phone metadata, encrypted chat logs, and social media messages between Diddy's team and staff members connected to Ellen's production. Their goal is to see whether there were any signs of coordination or any messages that hint someone had a clearer picture of Diddy's late night world than they admitted publicly.
I thought he was this clean businessman who rise to the top because he was such a powerful and, smart, educated man. I had no idea that he had this other side to him. And when I started to get exposed to his lifestyle, I started to really realize, this guy has an addiction. It's not just, once every few weeks, it's every day, every hour.
And if investigators find anything that looks like an attempt to hide or soften the truth, the consequences could reach way beyond public embarrassment. Legal experts keep reminding everyone that under RICO, even people on the edges of a situation can face charges if they knowingly help keep an organized setup running in the shadows. Ellen hasn't said a single word about these claims, and her silence is only making people talk even more.
He was responsible for Diddy's day-to-day life, so he is able to provide a lot of information about what that life was like. He goes into detail on extensive use.
The longtime TV host who stepped back from television in 2022 after earlier workplace drama was spotted relocating to the UK in late 2024, right around the time pressure around Diddy's situation started heating up. At the time, her team framed it as a move for creative renewal, but now some insiders say there may have been more behind that decision. Two individuals familiar with her circle told reporters she was quietly briefed that her name could appear in sealed documents tied to the investigation, turning what looked like a fresh new chapter into something far more complicated.
And if you had day 17 on the Diddy trial as the biggest one yet, guess what? Bingo, you won, because today was probably the most eventful day as far as things that happened that were said on the stand, and most importantly, things that the judge said, because Diddy almost got kicked out of his own trial.
If these reports are accurate, they would explain her sudden disappearance from the spotlight, her barely there online activity, and her refusal to comment on the old posts involving Diddy, because those posts are exactly where all this renewed attention started. Back in 2016, Ellen tweeted a birthday message calling him Cuddle McSnuggle stuff, adding, "You don't need to know why." It felt goofy and harmless at the time, just another celebrity joke, but today that same line reads way differently and people aren't laughing anymore. When the tweet resurfaced after Diddy's arrest, social media users packed the comment section asking why she hadn't taken it down, with one person saying the account manager must be out of town.
The question is he a criminal? Is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law.
And suddenly, that joke didn't feel like a joke at all. But in 2006, it felt like a question loaded with suspicion. Why would she give someone now facing serious accusations such a personal nickname in the first place? Was it simply lighthearted celebrity talk? Or does it point to a familiarity with his private world that she never publicly acknowledged? Ellen's whole brand was built on access. She was known for getting close to artists, actors, and big industry names in a way few hosts could. And Diddy returned to her show again and again, even during difficult chapters of his career. For example, in 2009, when he came on her show while facing criticism for sheltering Chris Brown after the Rihanna incident, she pressed him about accountability. He shrugged it off, saying he didn't cast judgment, and she let the moment slide with a smile. Back then, it looked harmless, even responsible, but looking at it now, the vibe feels uncomfortable.
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, you're a huge iconic, TV star or movie star, and you're in some very, very...
Almost like something was being brushed aside that shouldn't have been. People on Reddit, quote, have even described those old interviews as having a dark energy, as if something unseen was hovering in the background. Prosecutors have pointed out that Diddy often used media appearances to make questionable behavior look normal and to protect his public image. If that's true, then Ellen's platform might have played a bigger role than anyone expected, even unintentionally. Behind the scenes, federal investigators are now trying to understand exactly how far the structure prosecutors call the Combs enterprise stretched into mainstream entertainment circles. One attorney familiar with RICO cases said they're likely searching for any signs that celebrity appearances, friendly interviews, or casual endorsements were used to soften his image or build cover stories. If any of that turns out to be true, it would flip the way people view those moments, not as innocent talk show segments, but as strategic moves woven into something far more serious. Emails, production notes, or even appearance fee records could all become part of the evidence pile, which means every archived conversation between Ellen's team and Diddy's publicist suddenly matters in a serious way. If investigators discover proof that anyone helped hide misconduct, even by accident, it could open the door to obstruction or accessory allegations, and right now the whole entertainment industry is watching with real concern because the fallout could reach way beyond one celebrity. Plenty of A-listers have already stepped back from Diddy. Names like Pink, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Ashton Kutcher.
Same thing for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the interesting thing about the Epstein and the theory about Epstein is we know he filmed people for sure on that island. He has a lot of movies, a lot of films of people that are very, very powerful political figures. And entertainers, business people. So, do you really believe that Jeffrey Epstein himself? And
of course not.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Have all quietly put distance between themselves and the scandal, but Ellen's silence stands out more than anyone's. She hasn't criticized Diddy, hasn't spoken up for victims, hasn't clarified how she feels. Nothing at all. To some people, that looks like a legal strategy, like her lawyers advised her to keep quiet before anything she says gets twisted or misinterpreted during an active investigation. To others, the silence feels suspicious, like avoiding the topic is its own type of answer. Then Joe Rogan stepped into the conversation and lit everything back up. On a recent episode of his podcast, he openly questioned why Ellen, once known as one of the most outspoken personalities in Hollywood, suddenly fell off the map right when the Diddy case exploded. He said, you can't be that close to the storm and pretend you never heard thunder. And that line went viral instantly, within hours. According to two insiders familiar with the inquiry, agents are now digging through contact logs from Diddy's publicity teams to pinpoint which hosts were granted special interviews, VIP access, or exclusive invites over the years. Ellen's show reportedly shows up on those lists more than once. The reasoning behind the search is straightforward. If Diddy uses TV appearances to present a polished version of his lifestyle and push back against accusations, then the platforms that repeatedly welcomed him become part of that entire pattern investigators are mapping. And that 2018 moment where Ellen joked about the real party starting at midnight, now it plays like a chilling echo of the testimonies describing those same late night hours as scenes of pressure and intimidation, a detail that feels heavier with every new revelation. The FBI reportedly wants to figure out whether Ellen's familiarity with Diddy came from secondhand stories or from moments she witnessed herself. And that's where the access question becomes serious. Sources say Ellen wasn't just hosting Diddy on her couch. She was occasionally spotted at private events tied to the same celebrity circle he dominated. Photos from the 2008 Elton John Foundation Gala, for example, show Ellen and Portia de Rossi standing right beside Diddy. Back then it looked like a harmless red carpet moment, but today that same image carries a heavier tone because the context has changed dramatically. If she attended even one of the mogul's more exclusive closed-door gatherings, federal agents are going to want every detail she remembers. They'll ask whether she ever noticed the late-night crowd shifts witnesses described, the moment when friendly parties allegedly turned into something far more controlled and intimidating. They'll ask if she ever got those same post-event messages other attendees mentioned, coded lines like "remember what's off record." Investigators recognize that kind of language from previous RICO cases where similar phrases were treated as signs of a shared agreement to stay quiet. But this investigation isn't just about appearances or party photos, it's about influence, connections, and who benefited from them. Ellen's company, A Very Good Production, has long-standing ties across networks, studios, and major advertising brands, the same ones Diddy's empire was partnering with at the time. Entertainment attorneys now claim federal financial analysts are tracing overlapping sponsorships, donations, and collaborative deals to see whether any silent favors might have moved between the two sides without the public knowing. Did Ellen's production company ever receive cross-promotion from brands linked to Diddy's beverage lines or clothing ventures? Did her team ever accept perks, transportation, VIP accommodations, or unbilled services during the years Diddy was pushing his projects? None of this proves guilt, but the FBI's financial division views those perks as possible breadcrumbs leading through a much bigger network of influence, a map of who helped who and why. Insiders familiar with Ellen's former staff say her team suddenly tightened its communication style late last year. One source recalls that by November 2024, her PR staff began removing old event photos, stopping scheduled interviews, and shutting down every question related to Diddy's arrest. And around this same stretch of time, whispers started spreading that Ellen's attorneys had privately reached out to members of Diddy's defense team, supposedly to clarify overlapping statements. That rumor has never been confirmed, but the timing studies just weeks before her move overseas has raised real suspicion among observers. If her legal team truly contacted Diddy's lawyers, some experts believe it could signal an attempt to line up stories, making sure there are no contradictions if either party ends up questioned under oath. It doesn't prove cooperation, but it raises the possibility of coordinated damage control, something investigators always pay close attention to. Meanwhile, the court filings from Diddy's ongoing trial are creating an unsettling backdrop, one that makes every connection, every photo, and every conversation feel heavier than it did the day it happened. Meanwhile, the court filings from Diddy's ongoing trial are creating an unsettling backdrop, one that makes every connection, every photo, and every conversation feel heavier than it did the day it happened. Witnesses have laid out a whole network of associates who handled the logistics around Diddy's private events, the security setup, the transportation, the venue bookings, the curated guest lists, everything. Prosecutors argue these weren't just random staff members picked up off the street. They were selected specifically because they could be trusted to keep quiet and follow instructions without asking questions. And when you compare that pattern with Ellen's reputation as a polished mainstream figure who shaped pop culture conversations for almost 2 decades, it becomes easier to see why investigators might wonder whether her influence was ever used, intentionally or not, to help soften the public's view of Diddy. Because one positive interview from a beloved, widely trusted host can lower people's guard faster than any official statement. That's where the moral tension hits hard. Ellen's entire brand was built on kindness, accountability, and that famous message she repeated constantly: be good to one another. She fired producers over workplace issues, she lectured guests about taking responsibility, and she positioned herself as the moral anchor of daytime television. And yet here she is now, silent, while the man she once jokingly called Cuddle McSnuggle Stuff is facing accusations of running a setup built on pressure and secrecy. The contradiction feels sharp. For years, she demanded openness from others, but now she's operating behind legal teams, confidentiality agreements, and strategic distance. It feels like the same Hollywood machine that praised her for moral clarity is now watching her slip behind a curtain of avoidance, hoping no one asks the wrong question. In this industry, silence has always been its own type of currency. You don't have to openly defend someone to protect them. You just stay quiet long enough and hope the situation fades, but this storm is not fading at all. Every week of Diddy's trial brings new testimony about assistants who were pressured into compliance, executives who chose to ignore warning signs, and public figures who kept showing up around him even though the whispers were getting louder. And with every new detail coming out, the silence from people who once stood close to him, especially someone with a platform as powerful as Ellen's, feels heavier, more pointed, and harder to defend with each passing day. When these stories finally reach the jury, the context around every ally becomes critical, and that's exactly what the FBI seems to understand. If you want to break down a whole system, you can't just focus on the person at the top. You have to examine the entire structure that allowed that person to move the way they did. That's why the stakes for Ellen stretch far beyond a damaged reputation. If investigators determine that she or her company gained anything that could money, access, influence through Diddy's operations, the consequences could be serious. Even without official charges, the mere perception of being part of the circle can destroy a legacy faster than any courtroom verdict. Former talk show staffers have already admitted privately that their nervous federal subpoenas might soon reach the Warner Brothers lot, where production files, guest agreements, and backstage footage are kept. If any of that material clashes with the public story or shows unusual requests from Diddy's team, then Ellen's silence won't look like caution anymore. It'll look like a strategy she leaned on. Industry insiders say networks are already bracing for the possibility of reputation cleanup. Streaming services that carry Ellen's old episodes are reportedly discussing backup plans in case a damaging connection comes to light. Advertisers are on edge too, asking the same quiet question: if Ellen knew more than she ever admitted, how long before the public starts turning on everyone who helped her keep that image polished? There's also a psychological angle that can't be ignored. Ellen's brand was built on control, controlled tone, controlled segments, controlled emotions. Every laugh, every moment was planned to a precision. So seeing her now retreat into total silence feels like more than simple exhaustion. Some of her former associates believe she's frozen in fear. Fear of what evidence might be out there, fear of what her past interactions might look like under a federal microscope, fear of losing the moral authority that made her brand powerful for so long. Others think she's shielding herself from a system she knows inside and out, the same Hollywood structure that once protected her and rewarded her for staying aligned with it. People who benefit from silence often understand better than anyone how strong silence can be when things start falling apart. So where does that leave everything? We're now looking at a veteran talk show host under quiet federal review, a famous music mogul facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison, and an industry built on relationships, loyalty, and complicity suddenly trying to figure out who gets exposed next. The FBI doesn't spend months tearing through emails, contracts, and behind-the-scenes documentation just for curiosity. They do it because they're hunting for patterns. They follow the money paths, the communication chains, and the repeated behavior that shows who played what part in the bigger picture. And if Ellen's name is genuinely sitting inside those working files, that means investigators already found enough small threads to start tugging. Threads that might unravel something way larger than anyone expected. Right now, the real question isn't whether she knew about any part of Diddy's alleged lifestyle. The real question is how much she may have helped keep things hidden, even if she had no idea what she was stepping into at the time. And that pushes us straight into a truth Hollywood has tried to dodge for decades. This town runs on an unspoken code: protect the powerful, reward loyalty, and never break the silence. But codes like that always crack eventually. Maybe Ellen thought she could stay quiet long enough for the chaos to pass. Maybe she believed moving overseas would give her a safe amount of distance from the pressure building in the States. But investigations don't respect distance, they respect evidence. And every new week seems to bring that evidence closer and closer to her circle. So now we have to face the tough questions. When the truth finally comes out, will Ellen speak up and clarify her place in all this? Or will she let her legacy crumble under the weight of unanswered questions? If investigators keep tightening the spotlight, how many more names could spill out of the shadows right alongside hers? How many people might get pulled in without ever realizing they were part of the story? Tell me what you think, because this story is nowhere near done, and the next reveal might flip the whole situation upside down. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment, and I'll see you on the next one.